In the beginning, God creates everything. He creates the creation, the earth we're on, the water. He creates all of the animals and the insects, even the birds. And then he creates Adam and Eve, our first men and women that ever be on earth. And he creates them, scripture says, ex nihilo, or from nothing in Latin. And this word is amazing, and this language is amazing because it refers back to a time where creation and Adam and Eve lived in perfect synchrony with God. They walked with God, they understood God, and their creation, their created bodies didn't hurt. You see, their bodies weren't broken, they weren't depressed, they weren't anxious, they weren't obese, they weren't binge eating, they didn't walk around with headaches. They had this perfect relationship with God and perfect relationship with their bodies. Now, of course, you might know the story. Sin enters the world with Adam and Eve's decision, and it taints and fractures the relationship between God and between man, and it destroys their relationship. And as a result, all of the good things about our bodies and all the good things about our relationship with God breaks. Well, while we are never going to be able to ever achieve that relationship again with God until Jesus comes back and renews the world, we can strive as a result of being saved by Jesus and strive for this renewed creation where we can experience our bodies functioning better. And that's what the Ex Nihilo lifestyle is all about. When it comes to eating food, Adam and Eve ate food the way God intended them to eat it. There were no GMOs or synthetic fruits or synthetic sugar. There was no hydrogenated oil. There was no sucralose. There was none of these synthetic foods that we all flavor in an attempt to get people to buy things or in an attempt to get things mass produced. None of that existed. And so Adam and Eve ate in perfect relationship with God. And so they eat fruits and vegetables and meats and oils the way God created them to. The Ex Nihilo lifestyle is about pursuing that. It's about figuring out how we can eat food as close to the way God made it as possible. And in so doing, we can reclaim some of what we lost in the garden when it comes to our eating. And when it comes to exercise and it comes to fitness, we need to reclaim some of what we used to be like. You know that in the first century, they didn't live sedentary lifestyles. They didn't work at desks all day and having bad posture, being hunched over. Those things didn't happen. They didn't die from chronic diseases like diabetes and high blood pressure, hypertension, and the like. There weren't those sort of diseases back then. They walked all over the place. They would walk miles and miles and miles and get outside and be outside in nature. And we very rarely do any of that today. And the Ex Nihilo lifestyle is about going back to what it was like to move around, to be living the way God created us to live, and to be moving the way God created us to move. When it comes to our minds, I'm pretty sure that none of us are living optimally. We suffer from brain fog and that 2:30 feeling where after we had a glucose surge with our bread and with sugar, that we just are all so tired and fogged out, and our days are difficult and we forget words and it's hard to think. I don't think Adam and Eve thought like that. I think they had clarity of mind consistently. None of us have ever felt what it feels like, but there are ways we can explore and get back to having clarity of mind. And so what foods do we need to eat? How do we reduce stress so we can reclaim the brain God has given us so we can think clearly and have great relationships with the people around us? When it comes to our spirits, anxiety, depression are at all-time highs. Social media has supposed to be led to a reduction of loneliness and anxiety, depression, and things like that, and stress. And in fact, all of those things are continuing to go up. The Ex Nihilo lifestyle is about reclaiming our soul. God calls us into solitude and in community to engage God in magnificent ways, and we cannot do that any longer. So instead of suffering from depression and anxiety, the Ex Nihilo lifestyle is a call back to engage God the way He wanted us to engage Him. It's a call to solitude at times, it's a call to relationships at times, and it's a call to figure out how we can get our brains and our souls to be living in synchrony so we can engage God clearly. This is why Ex Nihilo Health exists. It's about reclaiming the vision of what God originally had for humanity. Yes, we will never be able to fully reclaim that vision until Jesus comes back, but we can pursue what God originally intended for us by learning, by studying, by praying, by meditating. It is an intentional call to live out the vision for our physical bodies, our minds, and our spirits that God has given us. So I hope you'll join me on this journey as we explore what God has for us.